What is going on, you guys? Welcome back to the channel, and today I want to talk about inflatable paint booths yet again. I did a video like this a little while back, but I actually just recently received a different inflatable paint booth. This one's quite a bit larger. I was contacted by a company called Warsun, and they were kind enough to send over this booth for me to check out, so I do appreciate that very much, and I'm going to have all their information down below if you want to check this out for yourself. But as you've seen in the title of the video, I'm just not so sure that these inflatable booths are for me personally. They definitely have their use cases, and we're going to go over all of that here in just a little bit. But for me personally, doing projects at the house here right now, I'm not so sure if I'm going to keep using these or not. So let's go ahead and get into it. The first thing we need to talk about is the setup. So you're going to get the booth and get it all folded out flat, unfolded, just get it all spread out. One of the first things you're going to notice is deflated. It is very heavy. It's just really big, so there's a lot of it there. It's really heavy and hard for one person to move by themselves. So it's going to be definitely recommended to have an extra set of hands whenever you're setting one of these things up or taking it down. It's going to make things go a lot quicker and easier. The first time I set this booth up, I was by myself and I unfolded it, hooked up the blower, and it blew up pretty quickly. They do blow up very fast. So it was inflated in about a minute and it pretty much popped straight up and stood up how it was supposed to. But the second time I went to set it up, I don't know, this is probably just something to do with how it came folded and how I folded it and set it back out. But the second time I went to unfold it and blow it back up, it wanted to kind of flip over on one side of itself, and the old booth I had did the exact same thing. And this is where it's easier if you just have an extra set of hands to help you pick it up and spread it out as it's inflating and move it to where it's need to be so it can actually stand up. It is very difficult when it's sitting on its side like this for one person to actually get it stood back up how it's supposed to be. And in this particular instance that you see in the video, I didn't have anyone else at home at the time to help me with this. So it took me, I'm not sure exactly how long it took me, but it was probably 15 or 20 minutes just to get this thing stood up after I had inflated it. But now it is inflated, so let's go ahead and check out what this looks like, what the interior is like, and cover some of the things I do like about this. So this booth is definitely a bit nicer than the old one I had. It's a lot bigger. I think the filtration is better. I think the windows in it are better. It just gets more light in it. There's two very large filters in the sides, one on each side, and these are easily replaceable. They just velcro on, so once they get too dirty you can pull them off and get replacements and just velcro those back into place. And then there's a cover that can go over these for when they're not in use that also just easily velcros right over the top. So I'm a fan of these. On my other booth, these are not replaceable. They are sewn into the side of the booth. So this is the 28 by 15 by 10 model, and it is very large. There's plenty of room inside for a normal sized car, and you should be able to get to all sides of it pretty comfortably. I had a few parts loaded up in here, just two stands, about 3 different pieces, and there was a ton of room, nothing to worry about there. So once I actually had it set up, the actual process of spraying these parts in the booth went pretty smoothly. Like I said, there's plenty of room to work around, and the job came out pretty clean. That's another benefit to using one of these inflatable booths. If you're used to painting outside, some days are definitely better than others, so if the conditions are not ideal, one of these could definitely help you out in keeping debris and things out of your paint job, and just giving you a nice contained place to spray. So next up, let's talk about airflow and filtration, and this is kind of one of my points where I'm not completely sold on these inflatable booths. So the booth came with 2 blowers. This is pretty standard. One is a large, about 1,000-watt unit that handles inflating the booth and keeping it upright, so this will be running the entire time to keep the booth upright. Then there's a smaller one that's about 400 or 500 watts that is supposed to act as an airflow fan. It hooks up to an inlet that goes into the little separate room in the back of the booth and can also flow throughout the entirety of the booth. But in my experience, this just never seems to work very well. I've even tried putting one of the larger blowers on here, and I still think it's just too big of an area for a fan like this to properly handle. And keep in mind, a lot of this is going to be a bit critical just because I have worked in a body shop before in a real paint booth, and that is what I'm used to. So stepping to one of these is just a big adjustment, and it's not nearly as good as a real paint booth, obviously, but it is a fraction of the cost. So there is that to consider. You've also got to consider how often you're going to be painting, what kind of jobs you're going to be doing. If you're trying to do this for a living, you know time is money, and that's where that comes into play. Where is it worth it or not to set this up? But if you're just doing small personal projects here and there, and you want to step it up a bit more, this could be for you. Just keep in mind some of the things I'm mentioning in this video. Make sure you have an extra set of hands, and just know what it's good at and its limitations. So I also got with the booth the elephant trunk, and I haven't had a chance to try this out yet, but I have heard pretty good things about this as far as extraction and working better than the airflow fan. So this basically just hooks up to one side of the booth, and then you could hook an exhaust fan to it and route all of the exhaust out of the booth and outside. So I have heard these work a lot better. I haven't had a chance to try it out yet. When I do, I might make another video on that. And honestly, on smaller jobs, this isn't going to be as big of an issue. On these parts here, I didn't even use the airflow fan or an exhaust fan. I left one of the doors cracked, and in between coats, giving it about 5 or 10 minutes, it honestly aired out a fair amount, and it wasn't too bad. It's just when you get to bigger jobs is where you're going to have an issue, like the all over Miata job I did in my smaller booth. It quickly became overrun with overspray. It was very thick and foggy in there, making it hard to see and hard to work, and that is just not ideal. That really needs to be getting exhausted out properly. So if you do have one of these and you have experience with this and you have a better way of doing it, please let me know in the comments down below. I've just never had a great time with getting it to exhaust out of the booth very well with any of the provided fans. Now real quick, I think the ideal setup for this would be if you had a shop or a space big enough to keep this thing in permanently and keep it upright permanently. What you would do is build a frame inside of it, so whenever you're done you could turn off the fan, but it won't collapse all the way down. It would just sit on the frame, and that way you could leave it set up all the time, and it would be very quick and easy to go in, turn it on, and do some spraying, and then when you're done, just shut it off, and everything will still be upright. You could leave parts in there if you needed to. You could even set up more lighting. So I think in that scenario is where these things are really going to shine. So once you're done spraying, you're going to have to leave the booth up to give your parts enough time to dry and move them out, or just be very careful and move them out into a safe space so you can deflate the booth. So once you turn the fan off and open all of the vents up, it's going to take some time to flatten all the way out. So I like to leave it and go do something else for a little while and let it get as flat as possible. And then this is where you want to get an extra set of hands and just fold it in half a couple times, and then roll it up as tightly as you can, getting as much air out as possible. If you do this and you have an extra set of hands, you'll be able to get it back in the storage bag. And again, it's going to be very heavy at this point, so you'll want to both be able to grab the bag and move it to wherever you're going to be storing it. So hopefully you found this video helpful, and it could give you a bit more insight into what it's like to actually have one of these inflatable paint booths. These things definitely have their uses and can be really helpful if you don't have a good place to spray and you want to get some projects done and you want them to come out pretty clean. Just keep in mind the limitations, the setup, and if you can have an extra set of hands to help you with it. Again, if you want to check this out for yourself, I'm going to have all the information linked down below. If you have any questions about what I talked about today, make sure to leave a comment down below. As always, thank you for watching, have an awesome week, and we'll see you in the next one.